I'm Dr. Anthony Harper with the Intermount Christian News. Blessed to be with Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel, Sharen Haskel. Thank you for joining me from Israel.
Hi, Anthony. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
It's a pleasure to have you join me. And by the way, blessings for a new year, Rosh Hashanah.
Thank you very much. I wish you and the American people and all the Christian communities around the world who have been praying for us for the last 2 years a happy new year and a blissful one, full of health and prosperity and stability and peace.
Well, we sure need a lot of peace, don't we? In light of their several very challenging issues for Israel, with one of the big ones I can think of is Qatar. Could you comment? You share the latest development regarding Qatar. I know that there was a bombing taking out Hamas in Qatar.
Well, Anthony, it's very, very simple. As long as Qatar hosts the leadership and the executors of who committed the 7th of October massacre, the most atrocious day that you can imagine, where it's the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, and are willing to commit the same atrocities over and over again. They say so in interviews, bragging about it, declaring it. They will be a target, the same as the United States targeted in Afghanistan, one of the worst terrorists in the world. We will hunt down the leadership who have executed, ordered, and operated that day of horror.
Very troubling about what Qatar has been doing over the years with giving and actually aiding and abetting Hamas. There's a real concern about them funding universities in the U.S., the antisemitism, of course, as well as UNRWA. We go way back for a while to the problems with UNRWA and Hamas ties to UNRWA. So what is Israel's concern overall with dealing with Qatar, funding universities, anti-Semitism program, UNRWA, and so much more?
Well, look, Qatar is playing a double game, and that mask has to be taken off right now. This is too dangerous, the double game that they're playing, and it's putting our communities in serious danger. The fact is that Qatar is funding and leading the Muslim Brotherhoods, okay? Al Jazeera, that they're funding in billions of dollars, is the mouthpiece for the Muslim Brotherhood. They are inciting the youth and indoctrinating to radicalism, to extremism. That puts our communities in danger, and they cannot play that double game. I think that, many countries around the world need to see it very clear. The Muslim Brotherhood, the IRGC, and other extreme organizations are banned in many places in the Middle East. Okay, Al Jazeera is banned in many places in the Middle East. The fact is that even the Palestinian Authority banned Al Jazeera, saying they incite the younger generation. Yet they can operate their poison, their blood libels, their fabrications all around the world, in America, in Europe, everywhere, in Africa, in Latin America, to millions and billions of viewers. This is the most popular network on social media where they're spreading complete lies. It is a serious danger, and Hamas and Turkey as well have been shielding and hiding and hosting the Hamas leadership. The war is ongoing. The suffering of the Israeli people, the Palestinian people, and the leadership of Hamas is staying in those luxury hotels, refusing to end the war, refusing to sign a ceasefire, refusing to return our hostages. When Israel said yes 3 times to the American proposal proposed by Witkoff, and Hamas continued to refuse, they want to prolong the war. They feel now that the longer this war goes on, the more they will be rewarded. And the leadership of Hamas needs to understand that if they do not surrender, if they do not disarm, if they do not return our hostages, we will hunt them down.
It's a so serious concern. A lot of people in the world might think that Hamas are making some improvements. And I think this is kind of linked to the issue of the pressure on Israel and to accept a Palestinian state. More people seem like to be more in favor of Hamas than they are of Israel.
Oh, look, the Palestinians were offered numerous times, more than 12 times, a state of their own. They refused. And it is because this conflict is not about territory. This conflict is not a territorial conflict. This is a religious conflict, a cultural conflict. They do not want any Jews to live on the land of Israel. When you understand that, and you understand what we are facing, and how we made so many concessions in the past to give up land, to be able to try and achieve some stability and some peace. And every time it failed. And the reason that it fails is because you cannot resolve a religious conflict with territory. It will not satisfy them. And as it is written in the charter of Hamas, they will not stop until the complete obliteration of the state of Israel and until they can murder all the Jews inside Israel and out. So what those countries are actually doing, they are literally rewarding Hamas with a state. They are rewarding a terrorist organization for the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. How would you feel, Anthony, if after September 11th, after 9/11, the UN, the international community, European allies would have given, a new jihadist state to that terrorist organization? It truly feels like a betrayal, and it is so.
I think of the European nations about what happened in dealing with Hitler, and they were supportive of Israel having a land of their own, having a place. And now Europe is turning against Israel for the most part. It's hard to believe that they have forgotten this history lesson so quickly. So
it's more than that, Anthony. This is a serious warning sign, because those countries are dealing with a lot of internal politics, a lot of immigration from the Middle East that imported with it a lot of anti-Semitism, prejudice, racist ideas about Jews and hatred towards Israel. And, when almost 200 parliament members in the UK were voted and elected in by a very small margin that relies on those communities that immigrated from the Middle East, it is more about satisfying internal politics and not about, international diplomacy. And that should be a serious sign of warning to Europe about the trends and about where it's headed as well.
It doesn't seem to be headed in the right direction. And it's very, very concerning about what is happening for Israel, what's been happening on the college campuses. And I think of right now of a real strong Israel supporter, Charlie Kirk, who recently died and was very supportive of Israel. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made a statement about his support for that work. Did you ever meet Charlie Kirk?
No, I haven't met him personally, but I was following him up closely. His bravery, his clear conscience, and the capability of standing by what he believes, even though he's been probably threatened seriously in the past as well. Look, many pro-Israelis, people who advocate for the right of Israel to exist, and people who understand what's at stake, who do that publicly, very bravely, um, are dealing with a lot of death threats. We've seen that with almost all who were publicly speaking on the right of Israel to self-defense throughout the last 2 years. If you speak to every single person who has been speaking in favor of Israel, they'll tell you how many death threats they'll actually receive. But I think that Charlie was very unique, not just in regards to Israel, but he was such a unique voice. And for me, it's difficult to call this a political murder because Charlie wasn't a politician. It was far worse than a political murder. This was, you know, Charlie was using freedom of speech to promote what he see right for America, to try and promote his ideas, not through politics. And, by taking him, he took the voice of so many people, not the political representation, but the actual voice and belief. And I think that he was so unique in two ways that no one will be able to replace him in that. Look, in all religion, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, and other, we see synagogues and churches who their crowd is becoming older and older, and the younger generation is not coming, is not praying, feel disconnect. And in many cases, in universities, they feel ashamed. They feel ashamed of religion. They're being taught it's, it's all of these things that it's wrong, it's bad, it belongs to the old days. And Charlie was truly a messenger of God who was able to speak directly to the younger generation and make them feel proud of what they feel, of what they believe. He made them feel not just proud, but he gave them the opportunity to be able to be brave enough to go to services, to join churches, to speak about it on campuses. And I think that in a world where you are becoming more and more detached from your history, where you feel, or you're being taught in universities to hate your history and your religion and the history of your country and your tradition, he was such a unique voice that was able to combat it and make that younger generation feel connected, feel pride. And he did that in such an eloquent and special way, with an open conversation, with a lot of love, no hatred. And that's what made him so unique. And he will be really missed. I can't see someone capable of doing something like that. And I think that's why his murder was so much worse than just a political murder. There's many more things I can say about him. I was just extremely, impressed. I think that from what I've seen, during times of great difficulties and a question about the fate of your country and where it's headed, he was able to combat emotions with facts. He was able, during these days when so much, especially from the extreme progressive, is relying solely on the emotion and what people feel, he put back the conversation about facts, about history, about real events, about reality. And he had such a huge source of knowledge, he'll truly be missed. I think the world is, The world is going to miss him. He was only in the start of his journey. And he really was taken from many people. It was devastating. It took me, I was thinking about it for many nights, and still now.
I know his funeral is tomorrow here in the United States. And I hope that there will be someone to take his place if they could, to be outspoken regarding Israel and college campuses. I know it is so important with what we were talking about earlier about the assaults that has happened in the college campuses, the protests and all the hate. And what finally is the latest development regarding Gaza?
Our troops have started operating in the two last strongholds of Hamas. Last week, there were huge evacuations from these areas of civilians after 2 weeks of warning. We've been warning civilians to evacuate from these areas and to not shield Hamas. Hamas was holding them at gunpoint, but they've started evacuating more so towards the end of the weekend. To the end of the week. We have opened another route when we saw there's heavy traffic on the main road. So we've opened a second road so that they'll be able to free through. And now the IDF will start its operation in those two last strongholds of Hamas.
So how do you see there being actually peace in Gaza when Hamas is still there and a lot of the so-called Palestinians being in favor of them and supporting Hamas? I know that President Trump and others have talked about a time of reconstruction in Gaza, but are there any plans that you see in the not too distant future where there could be reconstruction and those people move somewhere else?
So I think, look, it was very easy for Hamas to recruit terrorists from a population it indoctrinated for years and years. There is a serious problem, and if we do want to talk in the future about stability, we have to start from the first most basic step, and it is education. To educate the younger Palestinian generation to coexistence, to tolerance, to peace, to fight racism and anti-Semitism. The fact is that in every second house in Gaza, Mein Kampf, the book of Hitler, was actually found. It was one of the most popular books there. And so from a population that's been so indoctrinated to hatred and violence for so many years, it's going to be a long process. In the meantime, the Trump administration, together with some of our other allies or other countries, have been starting to make discussions about what should and shouldn't happen on the day after. But this can only happen after our hostages are back home, all of them, all 48 of them, including Hadar Goldin, and when Hamas is disarmed.
I don't see, and have you seen any significant effort on the part of Hamas to really release all the hostages or be willing to?
No, they refuse, as President Trump is saying. They might be trying to use them as human shields. No, they refused any proposal that the Americans put on the table, unfortunately.
You mentioned about the education system and about how that there's been a lot of indoctrination. We've talked and discussed the issue of UNRWA, Hamas's ties to UNRWA. How do you see that UNRWA could be? Do you believe it could be reworked, or does it need to be totally abolished?
Oh, I believe it needs to be totally abolished. This is an organization that Hamas has taken over. It's been serving Hamas's cause and Hamas's agenda, unfortunately, and there was no willing at all to clean it for years. They knew about it. They knew Hamas is using this organization as their own, and they refused not just to talk about it, but to act by it. I think that even on the 7th of October, where UNRWA's worker participated on the 7th of October massacre, the attempt to try and shut it down, to ignore it, not to try and clean up the organization, was a clear message that this is not fixable and that this organization has to be shut down completely.
So how do you see any other agency that could be really into good education to take its place?
Well, I don't know yet. There's many other organizations. There's curriculums from many countries. UNICEF has been looking after children all around the world, millions of them. I think this is something that we need to have an in-depth conversation and see what we do, because without resolving this, it means that this cycle of violence will only continue. Will only be a few years next until another attack like the 7th of October will be attempted again.
So you're saying that UNRWA really needs to be abolished before there could be any plans to deal with Gaza and bring more peace in that area.
Look, I don't know if it needs to be a condition. We know that we are not going to work with UNRWA. We have passed legislation in Israel that forbids cooperation with this organization after what it's done. And so, look, we'll have to continue and see what will happen and what will be the plan of the day after.
A lot of serious issues to deal with, and wanted to let you know that our Christian audience is praying for all of you in Israel on a regular basis, praying for blessings for Israel in this very difficult time. Of course, comfort for all those that have lost family and friends due to October 7th. And thank you for joining me from Israel. Deputy Foreign Minister Sharen Haskel, it's a blessing to talk with you on these issues, and I look forward to more updates here in the future.
Thank you very much, Anthony. And I thank all the people who have been praying and supporting Israel during the last 2 years. Thank you very much.
Welcome.